Morning. Welcome here. Come on in, everybody. Grab a seat. While some of you are grabbing seats, others should be looking at what we're about to put up on the screen. You should be pulling up your Evenium app. No, not that. You don't want to be looking at that. Eric, pull up the Evenium slide so we can show people. There you go. The same app you use to register, the Connects Me app. Hopefully you all have this app on your smartphones. This is going to be one of those few conferences. I used to be able to say this is one of the few conferences where you could bring out your phones in the middle of conference. I think a lot of conferences are doing these days. So bring out your phones. Make sure you're on the Evenium app. Use this code Z30 to be able to find our specific sessions, and that'll allow you to have a conversation with the speakers here today. That'll allow you to be a part of Zionism 3.0. One more thing I just want to say before we dive in. I know that many of us have our minds in other places today and have for the last week. Many of our community are truly suffering up in the north with the fires. Some of the leaders in our community, Danny Grossman from Federation, Rabbi Rick Jacobs from URJ, spent Shabbat up at Camp Newman, up at Sonoma, looking at the devastation, and we are really thinking about them and trying to do as well. It's one of those things where thoughts and prayers go a certain ways, but we also need to do as well. So we're putting out opportunities for people to donate gift cards. The community up there has said that they're looking for gift cards. If you didn't bring gift cards with you, you can also write checks to the North Bay Wildlife Emergency Fund through the Federation. But obviously we're thinking about all of our friends and family, neighbors, the synagogue, the Camp Newman up there, and everyone who's hurting. But today we're here to do something else. Today we're here to talk about Zionism. Welcome back, everybody. My name is Zack Bodner. I'm the CEO of the Oshman Family JCC. Thank you. I'm also your host today, your MC. They just didn't have enough money to pay somebody, so they brought me in. That's the reality. It's my pleasure to look out and see another sold-out crowd. When we thought about doing this event almost 4 years ago now, we never knew it would become an annual tradition, much less a national conversation. That's what this is. Zionism 3.0 is a national conversation. In fact, it's a global conversation. I'm not sure you know this, but last year, we live streamed this event, and it was logged onto by 131 unique IP addresses from all over the country, all over America, from Canada, from the Ukraine, from Israel, from the Palestinian Authority in Ramallah. People were watching what's going on. So we're live streaming it again today. This is truly a global conversation. We have friends in New York, in LA, in Chicago, in Michigan that all want to put on their own Zionism 3.0 events as well. So this is something that's taking off. You all deserve a round of applause, especially those of you who've been coming back year after year. This is year 3, biggest and best yet. And what is the this that we're talking about? What is Zionism 3.0? It's a philosophy. It's not just a kitschy Silicon Valley term. As somebody said to me today, next year is going to be Zionism 4.0 because it's the 4th year, right? No, that's not what this is. This is an actual thought movement process. And it's based on the following. Zionism 1.0 was the pre-1948 Zionism. It was the Zionism of Theodore Herzl. It was the Zionism of, if you will it, it is no dream. It's the Zionism of Jews who were fighting against anti-Semitism and felt like if and when we can have our own sovereign state again, our own Jewish homeland, we will be free from that anti-Semitism. We will have the ability to make our own decisions. And Zionism 2.0 was the Zionism of reality, from 1948 till roughly 2000, from Ben-Gurion to the Second Intifada. Now, that's not a hard date. Some would say, well, maybe this started a little bit earlier than 2000. But the reality is, Zionism 2.0 was designed to be about people picking up and leaving their homes to start a new home. It was the Zionism of pioneers. It was the Zionism of building an actual state. And it was a Zionism that was defined by an ethos that some would make aliyah, some would move back to Israel, and some would not. And the idea was that for those who did not move back to Israel, we had an obligation, we had a responsibility to support those who did, right? We supported those who made aliyah, who built the state. We supported them diplomatically, financially, politically. But it was defined by the paradigm that those in the diaspora have a stake but no say. That was Zionism 2.0. You get to support those there, but you don't get to have a say in what happens. And what happened in 2000, when the Oslo peace process failed and the outbreak, the launch of the Second Intifada, is people had great concern for Israel. Obviously, they had great concern for Israel's safety and security, but there also appeared to be something else happening. People had concern for whether Israel was fighting that war the quote-unquote right way, right? Now, again, this concern started maybe back in right after 67. Many in the diaspora had concerns about what was happening with the settlements. In 81 with the Lebanon War, with the first Intifada. But what happened in 2000 really was that this concern about Israel's action crept from the edges of society, of Jewish society, to the mainstream. It started becoming part of the conversation. So the conversation became, do we Jews in the diaspora get to have a say and a stake? Or is it still the old paradigm? That's the question of Zionism 3.0. It's filled with a lot more questions than answers, by the way. We have a lot more questions. We don't know. But there are questions about how people today in the diaspora can love and support Israel without necessarily agreeing with every one of their decisions. How do people support Israel when they don't agree with their government, their policymakers, the policies themselves? What's the avenue? Is there a proper outlet for voicing our concern? Are we equal partners? Are we partial partners? Are we partners at all? Some would say no. We haven't earned that right. We haven't made Aliyah. Our kids aren't serving in the army. Our kids aren't being blown up in pizzerias and discos. We don't have a right to have a say. And others would say, no, absolutely. If this is the Jewish homeland for all Jews everywhere, we have an obligation to help make that homeland look like the place we want it to be. That's the idea behind Zionism 3.0. And I promise you, you're going to come out today with a lot more questions than answers, because that's the nature of this movement we're trying to create. Now, how did it come to be? It came to be about 4 years ago, shortly after I started here. Let me tell you the story of how Zionism 3.0 was launched. When I started here, the Iran deal was heating up. Remember this Iran deal? It's back in the news again. Maybe some of your speakers will talk about it today. It was heating up, and I was no fan of the Iran deal. I thought it was a bad deal, bad for America, bad for Israel. So I started bringing speakers to the JCC that would talk about how bad the deal was. And then one day, one of our board members came to me and very gently and quietly, in his wisdom, said to me, are you going to bring in somebody who's going to talk about how good the deal might be, the merits of the deal? I said, no, what are you, crazy? This is a bad thing. It's destructive. It's bad for the future of our world. And he very gently said, you may want to think about it. If you're trying to create the living room for the community, you need to have alternative views expressed. But he was a mensch about it. He didn't write a big email. He didn't stand up at a board meeting and make a statement. He just whispered in my ear. And I thought about it, and I realized, wow, he's right. But then I had another dilemma. How do I, in my conscience, bring someone to speak about this thing that I think is really bad, and yet recognize that this institution, this place is much bigger than myself, my own notions of Zionism or Judaism or kashrut, right? So we decided as an institution to have a panel. And we had the panel, what's the deal with the Iran deal? We had 2 people for the deal, 2 people against the deal. Michael Krasny moderated it. Raise your hand if you were in the audience and you remember that. Well, it was a sellout, right? Within hours, the thing sold out. We didn't have enough space in our hall. We opened another room. That sold out. We had to live stream this. And it was a hugely successful event. Why was it successful? Not because a bunch of people in Silicon Valley were going to determine the future of the Iran deal, but because we realized we could have a conversation about a very controversial topic, a divisive topic, the topic that created potentially some of the most intense cleavage in our community, and we could do it without it blowing up in our faces. We did it successfully. We sat down as a community, like a living room, and we had the conversation. And we said, you know what? We need to do this with Israel too. We need to do this with Zionism. And that gave birth to the Zionism 3.0 idea. And that's why we have in this room today people from the left, people from the right, people from the center. We realized we had to model, the JCC had to model what it means to lead. And it means creating a safe space to listen to those that we disagree with, right? Because that's the nature of democracy. Democracy means there are people with whom you're sitting that you don't agree with. That's the nature of community, right? That's why we chose the theme for today to be democracy in the spotlight. How do we reclaim that big, vast middle that most of us rest in without it pushing to the extremes? It's a tough conversation. We don't necessarily know the answers, but we know that if we can model it here, if we can sit across from people with whom we disagree, and I promise you, you will hear people up here with whom you agree and people with whom you disagree. There are people with whom I personally disagree vehemently. But if we can model that for our community, we'll be headed in the right direction. And when I say model, who do we model for? But let's, for starters, for the students in the room. We have more students at this conference than we've ever had before. Yeah. And that's in no small part due to our partner organizations, our friends at Gideon Hausner Jewish Day School. Thank you, David and Ora. and for bringing the 8th grade class. Thank you for Svi Weiss and Yavna Day School for bringing your 8th grade class. Darren Kleinberg and Kahila, thank you for bringing students. Sarita from Silicon Valley Hillel, and Jessica from Stanford Hillel. We have students from all of these locations who are here today. Yeah, it's wonderful. So let's show them what it means to have a conversation with people that we disagree with. Can we have that conversation like around the Shabbat dinner table, where you're arguing like a family, you're arguing out of love, you're disagreeing, you know your Uncle Bernie has some crazy ideas. And you're going to argue using the facts, but then you're not going to stand outside in the middle of the street and call them names. That's not how families argue. Can we model the right behavior? Can we argue like a family out of love and respect and civility? Or have the family ties frayed so much that it's beyond repair? You know, Yehuda Kurtzer stood up here last year, and he said, maybe we shouldn't be calling ourselves a family anymore. Maybe we should be calling ourselves descendants of a shared ancestor. I don't know. I hope not. I hope we still have this crazy family where we can disagree with each other out of love and respect and civility and help build something wonderful. I hope that's what we can do here with Zionism 3.0. What do you think? Can we do that? All right. So then the only rule is let's treat every speaker as if they're a guest in our own house. If you disagree with them, that's great, but let's be respectful. Let's be civil. And let's get started. You ready to get started? All right.